Okay, good morning, Priya. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. How are you, Rajiv?
So far, so good. Alert, awake, and alive. What else can I say?
Nice way of saying that. Yes, yeah.
Isn't
I
it?
can also say I'm never a better time to be alive and kicking.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you are in an industry which is doing far, far better than other industries in these tough times. So I keep teasing
Mhm.
people in the pharma, saying, it's like doctors. जब लोगों को खराब time चलता है तो डॉक्टर के गले में पैसा बहुत आता है. Likewise,
That's
pharma is doing
true.
very well.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting time indeed.
I know. Super. All well at the family side, otherwise?
Yes, yes. Doing well. Getting used to now. It's going to be a year since the work from home.
True.
For extreme extroverts, it's quite challenging, but it is. I think we've made our peace with it and found a way to be adaptable, to be agile, and to go with the flow.
I love those words, but tell me honestly, keeping your hand on your heart, is your hands itching to go back to work? Yes or no, or
Oh,
maybe?
yes, I must tell you, Rajiv, last week I couldn't take it anymore. Having said that, the leadership program, I went to office and did that. I said, it doesn't matter if I'm all alone. I'd just like to get the feel of being in that training room again.
I know. Super. So, welcome to the Leaders in Library Season 2, Priya, and thank you for accepting the invitation and joining in. We know each other for some time, and it's lovely to have you as a guest on my own event. So, that's beautiful.
It's my
Right?
pleasure.
Absolutely. Before we delve into the book of the day that you have chosen, and one of the very powerful authors whose books I normally think need multiple reads.
Right.
And at least with me, I can talk about every time I read a page, I kind of go back and let me read it once again. That's the kind
Yeah.
of thought that the man brings in. Before we talk on a couple of powerful concepts, let me introduce you to the audience. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are going to be listening to the guest of the day. All of you were part of Leaders in Library Season 1, and you had 33 global leaders coming and talking on 22 powerful books. Nudged by that Season 1 and a couple of leaders like the guest of the day, we started Season 2, in which we have 40 global leaders from the world of HR, OD, business, and CEO level coming and talking on 40 exclusive, powerful books. That's beautiful for a crazy book lover like me and the organization that I run. And today we have yet another guest, Ms. Priya Prabhu, Associate Director HR with Lilly and Company, one of the leading pharmaceutical companies in the world. And she is a thorough OD oblique HR oblique learning and development professional, has spent a lot of time in multiple industries to call out a few IT, electrical and manufacturing and pharmaceuticals organizations like Novo Nordisk, a great brand that I worked for earlier as well, a very energetic and a passionate HR person, and she said that she was itching to jump off her seat and run to the office given a chance. While many of my friends are saying, "मेरे HR वाले बुला नहीं रहे, घर में बैठा हूं मैं." So that's the energy and enthusiasm she brings in her profession. And beyond all this, why I'm so happy to have her is because she's also a crazy book lover and believes in the fact that books play a very significant role in expanding and amplifying human beings. So thank you so much, Priya, for joining on board. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Very kind words indeed. I'm struggling to recognize myself in all the lovely things you said about me. Thank you. Thank you.
I love the blush on your face. Super. So let's get started. Before we get into this serious conversations of a couple of powerful thoughts by the author, let me start with the first one. Tell me, how early in your life did books start, Priya? How young were you as a girl? You're running around and playing, and did books happen, or was it after a matured girl that you became?
No, no. I mean, I think we are a function of all the experiences that we go through as children. My mother is a serious academic in the sense she did in literature, Kannada literature, but literature nevertheless. So, as children, my siblings and I were really encouraged to read, and we had specific reading time ever since I can remember, maybe class 2 or class 3, between 7 and 8 every night. That was reading time, irrespective of what you read, you had to read homework. Typically, it wasn't homework. It was crazy about the Enid Blytons and the Nancy Drews and
Uh,
those kind of Mallory Towers by Enid Blyton. So we were my sister and I were very, very interested, and we couldn't wait to get to that.
did it have the Milson Boons as well?
No, never. I mean, I
No.
was born in that age. So I was a crazy Enid Blyton fan, and
Oh,
still
me
am.
too.
And I can just read any of her books till this day. later on, my cousin, who's an avid reader himself, introduced us to Russian folk stories.
Wow.
That is, they had such imagery associated with it. It was brilliant. And that also got me to the folk stories of the world. So I got quite deeply entrenched in, O. Henry and his short stories, and Guy de Maupassant and his short stories. So all the classic short stories really became a part of my life. And I think one of the things that I think my parents did very well was to ensure that we were introduced to storytelling in
Yeah.
every shape, size, or form, right?
Mm.
So, it was a very extroverted family in general. So we were always telling each other stories. But I remember there was this one session that I attended. It was a storytelling session on all our scriptures. When I say
Ah.
scriptures, it was not really, just the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, but really involved the Bible, the Quran, all the stories that go into it.
Ah.
Quite a telling impact on me, because from a young age, it told me, that it taught me how to be inclusive, I think.
Yeah.
I credit that quite a lot. Another thing is, I went to B school back in 2004, and there we, before all these, this Kiki challenge and all the ALS challenge, everything started, the water bucket challenge. We had a reading challenge, about a couple of us who were really interested in reading. We said, hey, let's do a reading challenge. And, I remember the one book that I read in the reading challenge, which stayed with me, it stays with me even today, it's on my shelf. It was a book, India by Shashi Tharoor,
Ah.
right? So it really talks about a very different side of India, right? So that had a very deep impact on me, and furthermore, I like poetry, and even to this day, I mean, you'll see on my wall, my favorite poem is still mentioned there, which is Invictus by William Henry. That is the one of the most beautiful poems that I've ever seen, and I take inspiration from that. Specifically, the last two lines, which is "I'm the master of my fate, I'm the
Ah.
captain." So
Beautiful, beautiful. That is so nice. Thank you for reminding me the Russian folklore, the Ukrainian folklore, all the dragons and fires that used to just pop out.
yes,
I remember those books that had those few things coming out. You could fold them. You have a dragon
yes,
coming out. Those kind of stuff in a green
yes.
and pink and red color. I would love them because they were also a favorite, along with the famous fives and the Tintins of the world and Enid Blyton. What a, I mean, I think our generation grew with Enid Blyton.
True.
Isn't it?
And I think a lot of our language skills, I think we owe it to her.
Absolutely owe it to her. Superb, lovely, lovely. So tell me, as you moved on from those kind of books and you went on to the corporate life, how did your evolution happen through books? And you would have obviously moved from the Enid Blytons and Jeffrey Archers of the world to self-help and leadership books. How did
Right.
they play a role in making Priya Prabhu what she is today?
Right. I think for reading, irrespective of which self-help or motivational leadership books you
Hmm.
read, it
Hmm.
helps more than anything else. It helps evolve perspectives.
Right.
Whether it's fact, whether it's fiction, it transports you into another world and gives you a glimpse of what is and perhaps what can be.
True.
Right? The I would say an occupational hazard of being in HR is that you need to constantly sort of look for these messages and look for things that you yourself get inspired by, and therefore you can share with the rest of the organization.
Absolutely.
For me, the whole concept of imagery is very important. What does it look like? What is the visual representation of what is it that I'm reading? That was very important.
Hmm.
And right from we spoke about Good to Great earlier. That's one of the first books that I read.
Hmm.
And also that book around the Gallup survey questionnaire, the book that it's based.
How to fill the bucket of that one?
Yes,
Yes.
where I remember looking at the book going, oh, okay, this is how the whole research part of it has really helped us evolve our management curriculum also over a period of time. If you were to ask me to pick out a management book, I wouldn't, because my lessons learned are not from management. Lessons learned are fiction, and the kind of writing that and the kind of heroes that are there in the books, which the kind of inspiration that they provide, lessons from scriptures. I think those really stand out to me. Of course, I still do the corporate read, the first 90 days and the
Lovely.
buy. by Simon Sinek, and Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay. But what stays with me are the imagery that I have is the one that I read, the fiction books, which really speak to me, and I draw my leadership lessons from.
Beautiful. That's so interesting. So, any one imagery fiction book that brought in a big leadership lesson for you that you can talk of? If you ask
Yes.
me, for me, Robin Hood has always been that imagery for me.
Yeah.
Anybody like
No,
you?
there are two books, okay, and those are two separate books, and I'm going to talk about it. One is a classic, which is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Why I like that book is because it was way ahead of its time in terms of the feminist messages that it was giving out,
Very true.
women to have a voice, irrespective of, I know it was a very controlled, sort of very protective environment for women, but the heroine who is so, you know, Miss Bennet, who is so forthcoming, who isn't afraid to speak her mind, who calls out a spade a spade. Those are the leadership lessons that we need to pick out even today,
Absolutely. Completely agree. Yeah.
right? That's one part of it. And the second part of it is this book which won the Man Booker Prize, The White Tiger by Arvind Adhika.
Um,
That's a really good book because it talks about the class divide in our country, and it talks about how you can either be a victim of circumstance or you can be a leader of your own circumstance.
correct. Did you
So
watch the Netflix White Tiger?
no, because certain times the book has such an impact on my. I've read the book a couple of times, at least 4 to 5 times, and sometimes when you make sense of the book in your own head, I stay away from the movie part of it. Although certain books are very good. If I can quote one, Raji, there was this trilogy by this Swedish author called the Millennium Trilogy. The girl with the sweet, dragon tattoo,
Okay.
and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest. The three books, and the gentleman who wrote it unfortunately passed away because before he could see the success of the book and the movie.
Was it?
This has to be one of the most brilliant pieces of fiction I have ever read. It has a very strong heroine at the center.
Yeah.
She's diverse, she's very different, and she doesn't give a care about the world. But it is a phenomenal book, a set of
Lovely. Send me the image of the cover book after this call. I'll
okay,
probably pick it up and read
definitely,
it.
it's unputdownable. Let me tell you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Superb. So as all those books happened, and you said fiction books and self-help book, what made you pick the book of the day, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, among all other books? It's a very
Right,
deep book. It's not easy to fathom in one read.
right. No. That let me give you some context on why this book is important.
Sure.
My first job in Infi, we went on a team offsite,
Mm.
as you go, and awards were given out as part of the start of the quarter, etc. So I received my first award. When I say award, it was more like a sort of a recognition. It was
Yeah,
I became
recognition.
on campus. Was a copy of this book.
Mm.
Like, it was back in 2005,
Wow.
2006, and I got this book. And as soon as I opened the page, I was hooked on because it spoke about how do you identify a fake sculpture when so many people weren't able to do that. And I thought that was a very interesting premise. Till then, I had believed not to go by first impressions, not to judge a book by its cover. But this book really placed a strong focus on intuition,
Mm.
subliminal decisions we make in our lives,
True.
responding to things around us. It's not an opinion, really. For me, it is more like a treatise, that book, backed with data,
That's a nice word.
right? Why intuition and why intuitive decision making is so important. Because intuition is at the very core. Today, we speak about being an empathetic leader and being a leader who goes by, who has an equal balance of data and intuition.
Mm.
I like, in Infosys, Mr. Murthy used to say, in God we trust, the rest must bring data.
Yeah.
And I'd like to sort of play on those words. In data we trust, but intuition elevates.
Yeah.
It sort of doesn't sort of take a one-side view to it. It says, okay, here I am. There is the process part of it. Intuition also helps you consider the people part of any decision that you take as a leader.
Absolutely. I think for an HR person whose job is nothing but to keep the employees happy, intuition plays a significant role, right? Because we
Right,
drive our work through feelings. It's more of
right,
there's less of cognitive thought process, more of effective domain that works for us, right?
Absolutely. In terms of HR, now a lot of focus is on HR,
Yeah.
data, process, which is all great. But I think we shouldn't lose the inherent gut or the intuitive capability that we have. I can refer back to some of the psychometric assessments and the tests that we do. One of them being the MBTI, and the other one being the color-based personality test on discovery insights. It really, there are certain leadership traits that we as leaders or corporate favor, which is, are you data oriented?
Yeah.
Are you retail oriented? Are you aggressive enough? Are you, so when we have an imagery of this in our head, and then you have people on the other side, with this personality traits being even more effective as leaders, it forces us to think about, what is it that really makes a leader? Is it that data orientation? Is it that attention to detail? Is it that, I will not take any decision without data? Or is it that inherent ability to thin slice, which we are going to talk about?
Beautiful.
Really look at the gut decisions that you're going to take and how effective these are
Absolutely.
overall.
You're right, right? And in the retail industry, it's proven that gut-based buying keeps us happy than analysis-based buying. It's proven.
Yes.
I can talk for myself. I go and look at multiple shares, and I used to go back to the first one that you said, and then usi ko utha lo.
Yes.
I'm happy with that.
Yes,
End of
absolutely.
the same bloody two-collared, eight-buttoned shirt with one pocket, no damn difference. But still, no, I'll go and pick up that one.
Yeah.
Sometimes, why the hell did you spend so much of time going around shelves and looking at multiple things? No, curly, but you go back to the first one.
That I think is a function of, we want that false kind of feel, that comfort that, hey, we at least tried. We looked
I
for
know.
those multiple options before we went back. And it happens to all of us, I think, with every decision. Even, when I was buying a house, I remember we saw 35 to 40 apartments and went back and paid a couple of 100 rupees more per square feet of the apartment that we saw first.
Yes, I know.
So, those decisions, you're subliminally already made them. It's just that validation that you're looking for, I think.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Superb. That takes me to the next question, which is very interesting. And obviously, at least I can speak for myself. I didn't know this phrase called thin slicing till I read the book.
Yeah.
I knew we can thin slice a bread, but I didn't know we can thin slice something else beyond a bread.
Yeah.
So, what is this ability of thin slicing all about, Priya? And how do you think leaders can really use it?
Yeah. That's,
How have you been benefited from that?
absolutely. Thank you so much, Rajiv. I'm sorry to have cut you off there.
Oh, no, please.
Thin slicing, I think, is the ability of our, unconscious persona to find patterns in situations and behaviors based on some specific slices of experience. I know that was a lot of words. Let me sort of break it down.
Please.
So there are judgments that we make about people or situations that we go through. Not only we make it, but others also make it. Being aware of the fact that we are making these judgments based on the variety of interactions we encounter helps us build that impression that we want to build in the other person. Because otherwise, it's very easy for us to seem like we are want to come across a certain way, but we come across a completely different way because
Correct.
we are a victim of our experiences, I would like to say.
Yeah.
Secondly, knowing that the macro traits that we have are observed and judged not only on a conscious level, but also on a subconscious level. There is that the cues that we give off, right? The specific gestures that we have, the fact that I'm using my hands so much.
Correct.
It takes practice to be able to connect the micro cues that collectively create the macro impression. Right? The micro cues, which is the micro expressions, the eyes, the face, the gestures. Sometimes subliminally, we're able to recognize the fact that the words are not matching the gestures. And that's how we
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Yeah.
That this person is inauthentic or insincere. The way that thin slicing works is our ability as human beings to be able to look at and slice these micro and macro traits in order to make an impression. Let me give you an example that Malcolm Gladwell talks about. He speaks about a research conducted on the effectiveness of teachers. Students were given 15 seconds clip to rate the effectiveness of teachers without attending the class. And the surprising thing is, the people who didn't attend the class still rated the right teachers, or the teachers who were considered to be the most effective, within that 15-second clip.
Mm.
Now, if you and I were to make this statement without the data having proved it, people would laugh at us, saying that how is
Correct.
it possible?
I know.
We have data to prove that, subliminally or unconsciously, subconsciously, we're looking for those cues. What make an effective teacher?
Uh,
Are they engaging? Are they explaining in a manner that students understand? And it only requires 15 seconds for people to
Correct.
actually make that decision. Isn't that beautiful? I mean,
Yes.
for me, it's like, in the book, I read somewhere that it just takes 3 seconds for us to make an impression on the other person. That's why the whole concept of speed dating, speed mentoring, because that's all you need.
Correct.
It can take 45 minutes, 8 hours. Always, in feedback that we get in training, people say we needed more time to discuss this. I'm sure you also get
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
need more time. So more time doesn't necessarily mean better quality of output.
I agree.
So, so using these skills is important in the work we all do, regardless of our profession.
Mm.
Realizing the impact of thin slices, especially the first impression.
Mm.
A critical first step, in my opinion, being an effective communicator, and realizing that the non-verbal cues are as important as the verbal.
Important. Mm.
And it's not in the book, but I really thought this was very akin to like a leadership being like an onion,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for peeling the layers.
Right, right.
You can't really see what's in the onion till
Great.
you peel the layers, right?
True.
But one has to be aware of the non-visible traits that make up the impression of a person, and that's what thin slicing is.
I agree. I think that's a very powerful way of articulating. I think it's very useful, right? Because you're doing it with a lot of awareness. It's not happening unconsciously or how do I say it, involuntarily. It's happening with a voluntary effort in the head.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And if a leader can do that, what benefit he or she would get?
So I think one of the things that, and I'm going to talk about it maybe a little more as we go
Mm.
deeper into the discussion,
Mm.
is that it rapid cognition really helps people make surprisingly accurate judgments.
Ah,
Because the thing is that we are able to recognize that these are the non-verbal cues,
mm.
and and respond to that appropriately.
Mm.
See, as leaders, it's always people always want to present themselves to you in a manner which is ideal, which is
Ah,
what they think you will like.
correct.
But as
Social
leaders, it's
behavior.
important for us. Yeah, exactly. It's like when you're answering a survey, people give the ideal answer of what they would like to see themselves as. You're answering a survey for a psychometric
Mm.
assessment.
Mm.
It is not something that you would like to see yourself ideally. It is who you are as an individual, who you are authentically as an individual. And for leaders, I think this is an important piece, because leaders are thin slicing every day
Yeah.
on knowing whether the cup meets the lip, whether
Mm.
what is what actually is, and therefore they can take decisions which are more effective.
Absolutely. I think that's very rightly said. That very logically brings me to this next question where you spoke about the rapid cognition, right? Snap judgments.
Yes,
Malcolm talks about.
yes,
He says this happens behind the locked door.
those
What is this locked door all about?
right.
And then how should leaders interpret this door and the locked door before those snap judgments?
Malcolm Gladwell, he introduces a strange problem. Even if people are good at making snap judgments about the world, they're bad at explaining their own judgments. I know I took this decision, but if you ask people why you took this decision, we tend to sort of rationalize it and validate it in our own way. But when we go back to the research, it shows that that reason had nothing to do with what I took as a decision. And this
Mm.
is what the snap judgment part is. For
Mm.
examples, psychologists have found that people's actual tastes in romantic partners are very different from what they think their tastes are.
Correct.
Putting it in another way, people can't really explain what they want. The
Mm.
world of professional sports is full of examples of people who intuitively do certain things but can't
Mm.
put it into words why they do them. Like they've given an example of Andre Agassi, who was one of the world's greatest tennis players. And he always claimed that he rolled his wrist when he returned his shot,
Mm.
apparently.
Mm.
And when the experts looked at it, there was nothing like that. because he thought he was doing a rolling of wrist, but it was he had rationalized it to himself. So that's
Right.
stories we tell ourselves. There are certain human behaviors for which explanation takes place behind a locked door.
Hmm.
Instead of trying to explain everything, people should accept that there are certain limitations to rational explanations, right?
Correct.
I think, as leaders, we need to accept the mysterious nature of our snap judgments. We don't know what we don't know,
Yeah, beautiful. That's a nice way of saying that.
right?
Why should leaders do that, Priya? If they don't do, what is the issue? Is it just about delaying decisions? Or is it about analysis paralysis? What is the counter effect of that?
Absolutely. You said it right, Rajiv. It's about the analysis paralysis. We have become a world where information is ubiquitous, right? It's everywhere.
Hmm.
It's important to not assign a reason to every decision because it helps us identify what our real motivators are behind a decision.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes credibility is lost between what is said and what is acted upon,
Correct, correct.
right? The question forces us to examine whether our words are, our words and actions, because this is sending off a signal to the people we work with. We're a bit too quick to come up with explanation for things we really don't have an explanation for. And
Hmm.
why this is important for a leader is that sometimes, saying that you don't know is
Hmm.
also a great explanation. As leaders, people
Yes.
expect that you will have the answers to everything. But in this VUCA world, I think everybody is learning as we go along. Right?
Correct.
We learn by example and direct experience because there are limitations to verbal instruction. How much
Hmm.
can you do from somebody telling you what to do?
I agree. I
But
agree.
if we want to assign reason to every single decision,
Hmm.
especially snap judgments,
Hmm.
very likely that we're telling ourselves stories which may or may not be valid.
That's a nice way. True, true. I think very right, very right. Now these are few advantages, right? And Malcolm also talks about the darker side of thin slicing.
Yeah, yeah,
If we thin slice a little more than what it ought to be,
right,
how does it hit the leader back? What could be sort of
right,
negative
yeah.
effects?
The dark side of thin slicing is basically about falling victim to your own prejudices or stereotypes, right? So, for
Okay.
example, if you think they give a good example where you assume that they did a research where tall people are
Hmm.
generally made CEOs of organizations, like 6 feet and above. I mean, talking about Fortune 100, and that's a stereotype, or that's a prejudice. It's not like you can't have CEOs who are shorter or who don't fit into that box.
Yeah.
Similar is the case for women in leadership, right? um, the way that Malcolm Gladwell says how you can move beyond the thin slicing piece is to expose yourself to people who will show you otherwise. You know, say
Okay.
for example, subliminally, and he gives the example of African Americans in the US,
Hmm.
because subliminally people are they have been a race which has been continually subjugated in the past 200 to 300 years.
Hmm.
Although they're saying that they are not stereotyping, there's no prejudice, data proves otherwise. Otherwise, you will not have shootouts, and the George Floyd case even, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So there is a power of thin slicing. You know, we should not fall victim to our prejudices. It comes from practice. It's not a one-time discussion.
True.
How diverse and inclusive we are truly. Talking about inclusion is one thing, but as a leader, let me give you a simple example. Say,
Hmm.
okay, I'm a very inclusive leader, and we talk about it and we song and dance about it. But if you're spending time with the same set of your leadership group every day, then you're not walking the talk and people can see through,
Yeah. True.
right? This is the dark side of thin slicing. You're really talking about you have to be cognitively aware that this is
Hmm.
the message that you're passing on as a leader, and therefore, how can you change your behavior so that it doesn't become a one-time discussion, a one-time talk, but
Correct.
really your cup matches the lip, like what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think being conscious of this is very important, right?
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah. Or else the thin slicing can kind of suck you in and then take you to a different orbit completely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, we are not consciously doing thin slicing, right? It is
Hmm.
something that is happening as a natural, uh, you know, outcome of all our interactions.
Correct.
But we have to become aware of it as leaders. I'm not saying that we're going to get 100% there, but I think it is something that, if we have to move towards being a more empathetic style of leadership, from command and control to a more empathy, care-based leadership. This is very, very important.
I agree. I agree. Beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing that. So tell me, uh, how do you as a leader uh, train your mind to be aware of that when it is happening? How do
Right.
you step back and do that? Could you help the young leaders to any practical tip?
No, I think this also comes from practice, right?
Mm.
Like being today, I love to say this in all my programs. The most uncommon thing that is missing is common sense.
Yeah.
No, common sense is most uncommon. The reason why I say that is, we have to be respectful of people's choices. That's one.
Mm.
But we have to be respectful of the fact that sometimes they are not saying what they are actually saying. Words are not really telling us the message, which is why, the 5 why technique in coaching
Yeah.
really, why is this an issue for you? And I've seen it to be so powerful because
Mm.
sometimes people are saying it's an issue because I won't be taken seriously as a leader.
Right.
That's an issue. Why is it an issue for you as a person? Right? And when you break it down and finally it comes to the very core of who you are as a human being,
Mm.
that's when we have breakthroughs in coaching. And I'm sure you recognize that.
True. 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 Absolutely.
Yeah? So I think that is one thing that I see is very useful for young people to recognize and to build is
Mm.
looking at what is stated may not necessarily be the issue or the concern at hand. You
Correct.
have to look beyond the obvious. And I think this book beautifully talks about that. There is a difference between what people say they want and what they actually want.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me give you a great example in the virtual environment.
Mm. Mm.
When we started with the lockdown, people wanted
Mm.
fun Fridays and engagement events on Zoom and other such things. It took on all of 4 weeks, 4 weeks, Rajiv, and I kid you not, for it to become a burden. People were like, "Hey, this is
Enough.
much, and we are staring at the screen all day, and this is what's happening." But we did a survey prior, and most companies did this, saying, "What would you like?" People said, "Yeah, we want some social time." But virtual social time didn't translate to a real time social time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So people said that they wanted social time, but what actually happened was that it was a burden on them. So do you
Yeah.
see the dichotomy there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That they wanted it, right? So if you remember, I don't know if you've seen this movie. There was a wonderful movie I watched called The Yes Man, where Jim Carrey plays
Oh
God. And
yes. Oh yes.
what they ask for. Turns out that's not what they actually want. Just by saying yes to everybody, it doesn't really augur well for us as leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, if you're going to ask a survey to people and say, okay, what do you want? These are the top 5 things that you come up and you roll out those programs. It's not
Mm.
necessary that all of those programs will be successful because that is what they stated that they wanted. It's not what it's not necessary that is actually what they want.
I
Which
agree.
is why focus group discussions, which is why the one-to-one connects are far more useful and personable rather than a
Absolutely agree. And we are all human beings or Homo sapiens, whatever we are. We need that physical
yes, yes,
interaction. Technology can never be the new norm that seems to be the fad. Everybody's
yes,
saying. We would have to go back to the physical environment and do stuff. Else, we'll perish as a community. It's
as a
impossible.
race, yes,
It's
absolutely.
impossible. It's impossible.
No,
Yeah.
the idea is to also look for implicit cues, right? You said, what
True.
else can leaders do? Whatever polling we do, we should take it with a pinch of salt.
Mm.
Analysis paralysis is more true than ever. Today, you can torture the data to seek the insights that we want. That's the
Correct.
reality,
Correct.
right? So, what is a differentiator will be that intuitive capability, will be that cognition.
I know. I know. I agree. I agree. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that point. Now I'm going to drift a little from this and take you to a concept which was very interesting for me. But I need to admit that it took a little bit of multiple reading for me to understand this concept called the Canons Dilemma. And I was thinking that have I been stuck in that dilemma as a leader over my own journey in the corporate life? And I realized that there were moments where I got stuck into it. There were few occasions where I could come out of it easily, and some occasions it kind of hit me a little hard, and I had to go back and hit the bed in the night and think over it. Uh, what is this Canals Dilemma all about?
Right. And
And how should leaders, especially the young leaders of the current world, who are having so many things around them and the right way, wrong way of looking at people, not looking at people, how should they understand this?
I did allude to a little bit of it, Rajiv, when I spoke about this polling piece, right?
Mm,
And Canals Dilemma really speaks about that. That, even if I can go back to the Coke and Pepsi example,
mm,
the whole dichotomy between what people say they want versus what they actually want, the need
mm.
versus the want,
Point.
so to speak, right? In Kenna's Dilemma, there was a singer named Kenna for all the viewers. The
Mm,
singer, very unique in the sense that was new, his sound was new. He was liked by big brands, big bands such as U2 and No Doubt. But the
mm,
charts and the radio and the polling showed a miserable uptake in terms
mm,
of the kind of music that he was putting out there.
mm,
And eventually, sort of, it became a self fulfilling prophecy because he didn't see the kind of fame and the kind of growth that people had anticipated when he was
mm,
blessed, so to speak, by such industry experts,
mm,
right? And why did that happen? Again, we go back to that point around this
mm.
whole thing around polling and survey. In the US, the Western world, we really like to use a lot of data. Market research is not a great indication of anything if it's not backed by the human
I
element.
agree. I agree.
So even in this case, in the Coke and Pepsi sip test, Pepsi tasted better in the sip test, in a blindfolded sip test. So Coke went and introduced new Coke. But the reality of it is nobody is going to drink the colas blindfolded, number one.
Mm,
Nobody's just going to take a sip and leave it. The one of the reason New Coke failed so much was because people said the first sip maybe Pepsi tasted better, but if you're going to have an entire bottle or an entire liter of it, Coke, the taste of Coke was much more palatable.
mm,
Right?
mm.
So all the research that you did really didn't give you the outcome or the way that people didn't give you a predictive analytics of
Correct.
what people would behave like,
True.
because people are unique. There are patterns to our behavior, but if we don't thin slice appropriately, then it is again going to go into the what we spoke about earlier, that it was the dark side of thin slice. So we're going to go into the fact that data can be tortured to seek any insight that we think we.
Yeah, 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 I agree. Somewhere, you know what? I'm just thinking, and this thought just ran through my head now as you're telling this, Priya, is I think our father's generation and prior to them far more peaceful because of the power of blink and the power of intuition, not getting into analysis the way we are, and we love to put every damn thing on a chart on a
Yes,
slide and then create
process
pivot
maps.
tables
Yeah.
and oh my god, I don't know if Bill Gates had not created Excel sheets probably would have not be doing that. Having
Yes.
said that, we do overdo that, right? Our parents are far more peaceful. I mean,
Right.
I want this. I don't want this. I feel this is good. I feel this is
Yes.
not good. Decision taken. Move on.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of things these days are, we should develop our own ways of looking at it. And just because
Hmm.
we've done a particular way so far doesn't necessarily make it right. That's one thing I would like to look at. One of the things in the book also coming back to it, different is not always bad, right? Anytime a new concept like music, cola, or some new invention, like even electricity or steam engines were introduced,
Yeah.
people have written it off because if you're going to ask somebody about a poll of a new thing that you're launching, people don't have anything to base it on, so they're going to
Correct.
say whatever they want to say because they
True.
come with their own prejudice or
And there's a
stereotype.
comfort of the past also playing on them.
So I think we have to take this whole polling and the analysis piece of it, predictive analytics, which has become so along with the human element, because you cannot predict with 100% accuracy that a human being is going to do, even if they say they will.
I agree. I think this is where this very powerful word in English or any language, optimalism, becomes
Yes,
very powerful, right? People don't get that word optimal. What is optimal? They just go beyond and do over of that and then figure out that I'm stuck in my own creation. Yeah? And Malcolm, this book beautifully brings out this in multiple examples, right?
I'll give you an example. There was this whole concept of listening with your eyes as a leader, right?
Yes. And that's my next question. So what is the listening with the eyes?
Yes. So for me, I was reflecting on it, and listening with your eyes is for me, moving beyond our prejudices
Huh.
or stereotypes or experiences that shape us. I'll relate this to a personal example. I had the privilege of being educated in a private English medium school and college all my life. And in my mind, I had that thought or experience that English, good command over the language, is what instituted a good communicator or an effective
Correct.
communicator. I remember when I went to B school in my university, this is completely broken down.
Mm.
From the top of my class in my undergraduation, I went to the bottom. Okay. I was nicknamed the Angrez because I requested people to speak in English because I didn't have that much of a command over Hindi, living in South all my life.
Right.
Right? I heard a classmate explain the concept of cost accounting
Mm-hmm.
in a manner that I had never understood before because I was an accounting graduate before that.
Right.
He helped me till I understood and enabled me to truly understand the concept. Right? And why is this important? Till then, my own experiences held me back because I thought an effective communicator, in my head was a person
English.
who has great, language skills in English. But a great communicator is one who can make things understandable despite the language,
Absolutely.
right? Since then, even today, and I think that helped me become a better interviewer, better
Beautiful. Beautiful example.
leader, because my focus is on understanding the person and the attitude and the learning agility, right? As long as the person is able to make me understand, that is sufficient. We can't hold people up towards our own supposed standards of excellence or our
Correct.
standards.
Correct. 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 Yeah.
So for me, that is what listening with the eyes is, because I realized that I was a victim of my own experience and my own stereotype, and that helped me become better as a
So
person.
what's your advice to young leaders here when they read this phrase called listening with your eyes? How should they interpret this and what should they start doing differently, Priya?
I think one thing is that I'm going to say trust your gut
Hmm.
because practice thin slicing. It is not something which will come overnight because we're so used to getting so much information. And one particular sentence that I will leave with this group, if you don't take anything else, take this: that all information is not knowledge.
True. True.
Right? All information is not knowledge. All information can give you input, but that doesn't make you a wiser person. The wise or unwise part of it comes from your interpretation of that situation and your thin slicing of that situation.
Yeah. 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 True. True.
And that's my advice to young leaders, saying that make the differentiation between what is information and what is knowledge.
No, beautiful. Thank you so much. That's a very, very powerful sentence. Definitely very powerful sentence. I agree. I agree. Again, our fathers and grandfathers, the amount of knowledge and the sages they had, I don't know,
Right.
it was all based on a lot of information like we have, but it was wealth of knowledge. You
Absolutely. Passed
started
on
the
by rote.
conversation with scriptures, right? Because that,
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of learning from our own scriptures, which were passed on in generations by, and it was verbal and it was more intuitively passed. I think there's a lot to learn there.
I know, beautiful. One of the guests who came for this event, Priya, and I want to thank her here. She picked up a book which I would not have read had I don't know if it is here. I actually not picked that book. This was the Upanishads by Eknath. I read the Upanishads for this event of a 45 minutes conversation. Mind blowing experience. And I'm always indebted to this lady for having picked this book because when she picked it first time, I thought, what a book is she picking? Will it do justice to young readers? But when I read it, I realized that it's not philosophical or spiritual. It is so practical and applicable when it comes there.
And so, I think, the leadership lessons that you learn from everyday experiences.
Yeah.
Something that I'll give you a recent example. The India versus Australia test, which happened, and there were so many leadership lessons that learned from
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But for me, what I recognize about that, and it moved me to tears, that article when we won, because it was an image of this Mohammad Siraj coming back and standing at his father's grave.
Yeah.
You know, you're never the fact is that you empathize with people at a very personal level. You're going to do their very, very best, very, very best.
Yeah.
That I think is something that we are missing today. In some sense, I think we should need to develop empathy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And look at the boys, three South Indians in the team. And
Right.
all of them absolutely no background at all.
Background.
Where BCCA has been over the years thinking about all Bombay boys.
Yes.
These three boys broke it completely. It's not about region, it's just about talent that can come from any quarter of the
Anywhere.
world. Yeah.
surviving beyond all the troubles or the
Yeah.
what life threw at them. I think it was very, very.
And as a South Indian, I'm so proud to see three boys from our side into the, I don't want to sound regional, but I'm saying it definitely gives me a lot of pride.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the
Lovely, lovely,
I'm
beautiful.
sorry, I had to refer to that
No,
because
this
it
was
was
important.
a
Absolutely. Please
brilliant,
go. Any
brilliant life lesson.
free flowing conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, with all this, tell me, as we come to this end of the conversation, when to think and when to blink is a confusion that could crop up in the head of leaders. And I'm hoping many of you go and pick up this book, guys. And if you have not picked this book, I would, along with Priya, very strongly recommend you to pick up this book of Malcolm Gladwell. It's fabulous. And then go pick up The Tipping Point also. These are two books which is a never, never miss by any leader. And if all of you have this book on your table and you're not read it over the years, I'm going to tell you, you've lost precious time in your life. Pick it up and read it.
It's a small, I mean, it's a short book, so I think it's easy reading as well.
Absolutely. Marvelous book. So,
So,
yeah, tell us this
so when to
confusion.
think and when to blink, right? It's a choice that leader has to make.
Hmm.
For decisions that require immediate, immediate kind of a snap judgment,
Hmm.
makes sense to weigh the pros and cons, and that's what the book says. Like, can be if it's an immediate decision, it is a small decision. You can weigh the pros and cons and take that decision. When there are multiple variables, it's makes sense to trust your intuition of gut, and this
Hmm.
is more true than ever. They've given scenarios in the book of wartime, and how intuitive leaders perform much better in war.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right? This, of course, comes from practice. Thin slicing or erroneous use of this can lead to disastrous consequences. We have to be very, very careful about the choices that we make as leaders. So, if I were to leave you with two lessons, I would say trust your gut, but practice thin slicing so that we don't fall victim to our own prejudice or stereotype. And second thing, all information is not knowledge.
It's not knowledge. Thank you so much. Those were two powerful inputs. Because my next question was two razor sharp advices to the young mind, which you already said.
Right,
I think
right.
thin slicing, and the other one is
All
all
information,
information is not knowledge.
not knowledge.
Guys, all information is not knowledge. It's marvelous. So whatever information you got in this conversation, or whether it is knowledge, go back and read the book to get expanded knowledge.
Great.
It's far more written across those pages of this book. It was a lovely, lovely conversation, Priya. I thoroughly enjoyed this 45 minutes with you. I hope you had a good time.
I didn't feel it pass by, so you did a great job as an interviewer. So thank you so much. I would also recommend that people read this book and draw their own references from it. This is our attempt at telling you a couple of lessons from the book, but I think there's a lot more that one can learn what is mentioned, and if we read between them.
And thin slice a lot of stuff there.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Priya. It was a lovely, lovely conversation. Look forward to seeing you sometime. We are in the same city, but we never get to see during Corona times. If things are opening now,
Yes, yes.
you are getting to office, tell me. I'll probably drive down to your office and see you there.
Yes, we'll do that. Let's catch up over a cup of
When you be
coffee.
coming to office, you see I'm sitting in my office. It's an HSR layout.
Yes, yes, I can see that. It
Yeah.
feels good. I want to do that as well.
Oh yes, I'm in office from May onwards. I can't sit at home. I'll die.
Yeah,
Impossible.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So
I sit in another office space so that I feel like I feel like I'm getting out of the house, out of the track pants.
lovely, lovely. So tell me sometime next week we'll catch up in your place.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much,
Take
Ravi, for
care.
having
Thank
me.
you once again for coming on. Bye.
Thank you.